All right. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, I want to get into the two big fights that we saw there this past weekend. I want to begin with Deontay Wilder, who was upset by Joseph Parker. Not just upset, but completely dominated by
Yeah.
Parker. This was a fight that I scored 12 rounds to zip, Kevin. I was shocked beyond words that there was, I think, at least one judge get Deontay winning at least 3 rounds in that fight. I mean, just how? How do you find that? Like, if you could find one, I
I
might buy
gave
that. But
Deontay the 10th.
all right, fine. 1 round. 1 round. That was the most I thought you could give Deontay Wilder. The eyeball test supported that. The punch stats backed that up. I mean, he was outclassed by Joseph Parker. Not that Parker was this incredibly effective fighter in terms of his output, but he shut down Deontay Wilder. He made that right hand an ineffective weapon. I thought he had a phenomenal game plan coming into that fight. Andy Lee, his trainer, look, they don't have the size of Tyson Fury, so they couldn't do the exact same things, but their ability to keep that fight at a certain distance and their ability to see that right hand coming, and when they did see it coming, to duck into it. That's what I saw every time, Kevin. Every time Deontay Wilder loaded up for that right hand, you saw Joseph Parker dipping his head and kind of putting it forward like a battering ram towards the midsection of Deontay Wilder, just closing that space quickly and not presenting Deontay with a hittable target. I thought that was excellent strategy, excellent boxing, and excellent performance overall by Joseph Parker. That we have to say right off the bat. But now about Deontay, 38 years old, coming off a brutally bad performance. Where does he go from here? He seemed to suggest in the ring that retirement was a possibility. He's walked that back since in multiple interviews, his own Instagram. So if his career is going to continue, what does it look like? What did you make of everything you saw from Deontay Wilder in Saudi Arabia?
I was really disappointed because, Wilder, I like him as a fighter, right? I mean, we all know he's not the classic boxer. He's not the guy that, is going to wow you and think of Willie Pep and all those type of things, right? But Deontay Wilder, when he gets in there, he provides action, and he provides action every single time until Saturday, right? And while I agree to a large degree that Andy Lee had a great game plan, and I think Andy Lee is a really highly regarded up-and-coming trainer, right? As good as he was as a fighter, and he won a world title, I think he's going to have a bigger mark in this sport as a trainer going forward. I really believe that. He's a smart guy. But, Deontay normally lets the hands go no matter what the opponent is doing against him. And you saw him in the first round. I mean, and I don't think just the first round. We saw he landed, according to CompuBox, 0 punches in round 1. He didn't even uncork it, right? He didn't even, pull it back where you thought he was going to throw it. He just followed Parker around the ring with his hand still. And that is nothing to do with Parker or Lee and their game plan. That was something to do with Wilder. And it makes me wonder, he talked about whatever that stuff he's taken, did it have an impact on him? He looked in magnificent condition. If you would have stopped when he got off the way in and you saw him, you said, is this guy going to, basically shit the bed? No way you would say yes on that, right? I mean,
213 pounds. That's his ideal fighting range weight.
Yeah. I think, what I was going to say 215 to 218, but yeah, 213, 218. I think that range is where he's proven to be best. And he is so quick, right? And that's why he's good, because he gets those fast hands and he beats you to the punch a lot of times. And he has that 83, 84-inch reach, which is difficult for guys. And he just didn't let his hands go. If he had let his hands go in the first round, even taking a lot of counters from Joe Parker, does that all of a sudden now, change the way Parker fights that fight? And is that game plan effective that way? But when you don't throw, you don't make the opponent have to worry about anything. And he gave away, a lot of rounds, like you kept saying, when is he going to start? When is he going to start? And he never really started. What was the most punches he landed in one round? I think it was 6.
He averaged 3 punches landed per round in that fight.
I wrote in my column about that. I said his punch stats look like a golf scorecard. The only reason that you wouldn't mistake it for a golf scorecard was round one, where you can't get a zero in golf. Otherwise, it was, like a hack golfer out there, 3, 6, 5, 4, I mean, that's kind of what it was like. And, you know, I was really surprised. So I guess, to go back a long way of answering your question, where does he go next? I mean, assuming he is going to compete, we got to get him back in the ring, against a top 10 guy, I think, quickly. I mean, there's a lot of tough matchups out there for him, like, right? Who do you put him with? If we assume Hrgovic is going to get the AJ fight, right? Is Zhang Zhilei a guy? Do you want to put Deontay?
You don't do that. That's a bad idea.
You saw the other day and against Zhilei,
No, he'd eat straight lefts from Zhang all night long, and good luck knocking that guy out.
Right, exactly. That's what I can say. So now, do we go down, step down to a guy who I think is on the way out because of the punishment he's taken? Do you put him in with a Joe Joyce and try to rehabilitate him against Joe Joyce? I think Joe Joyce has the ability to knock him out if he hits him, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, so Deontay is really in a tough spot. There's nobody on that card, with the possible exception of one guy, who was boring as all get out on that card and won his fight, which might be Frank Sanchez. Sanchez is, where is he ranked he's somewhere
in the top 10.
Top 10. His last couple of fights, he hasn't looked all that threatening. And he might be a guy that Wilder can hit, and
he might be too skilled though. Like Frank Sanchez, for as dull as the first half of his fight was against Junior Fa, he's got skill. Really high level skill. I mean, I'd lean more towards another guy in that card, Adji Kabayel, who is kind of that fringy world level type, coming off a big win of his own. I think he's more hittable than Frank Sanchez would be in those particular situations. I just, we give Malik Scott a lot of credit for some of the things he's done with Wilder and with other fighters, including Zurdo Ramirez, who I think he's had a positive impact on. But somebody had a tweet out that I saw right after the fight, where they said in the last couple of years, Malik Scott has turned Deontay Wilder into Malik Scott, right? Like where like he's moving a lot. Like seeing Wilder use every inch of that 20 by 20 foot ring was bizarre. Like this is the biggest puncher of his generation, one of the biggest punchers of all time. Yeah. And he's bouncing around the ring like I expected Sonny Edwards to do a couple of weeks ago. Like I didn't understand the strategy. And then when you get to the second half of the fight, or even the final 3 or 4 rounds, I didn't sense urgency from that.
Zero urgency.
Yeah, like zero urgency. Like I thought it was notable that going into the 12th round, the voice that was speaking the most in that corner was Jay Deese. Jay Deese, who is the man that helped mold, or did mold, Deontay Wilder into the fighter he became. His longtime trainer, who was supplanted after that second fight against Tyson Fury. Malik's game plan was just strange as all hell. Having the biggest puncher of this generation move like a bantamweight was strange as all hell. Like Wilder put his hand up at the end of that fight. I'm sitting there, I'm like, what? I even asked him, like, did you really think you won? He's like, yeah, I thought we did enough. Like, that's not possible. In no way could you have believed that you landed enough punches to beat Joseph Parker. That was insane. I'll tell you, Kevin, most disappointing. Like, look, you and I both like Deontay a lot. Like, he's a likable guy. Like, I've covered him going all the way back to 2008. I covered him going into the Beijing Olympics. I've been to Alabama multiple times, told this story in the magazine and on the web multiple times. He is one of the most media-friendly athletes, period. Top-level athletes, period. Or it has been, that are out there. So it's been so crazy to see him devolve into this conspiracy theorist. Like the conspiracy theories he had after that second fight against Tyson Fury about the gloves and all the angles he's showing on video, the crazy stuff he was saying after that fight. And then the costume, like that, only he knows the answer to that question. If that was really heavy, I don't know. But, immediately after he leaves Saudi Arabia, he does this YouTube interview where he says that Anthony Joshua was happy that Deontay Wilder lost that fight. Never really wanted that fight. There was all this rumors that he was going to retire if Wilder had won that fight. Let me tell you something, Kevin, because I was there, and I can tell you that there was a whole elaborate thing planned if Wilder had won and if AJ had won. The contracts were done. AJ was going to do his interview. Wilder was going to come to the ring. I was going to bring both of them together. There'd be some, social media worthy moment, and we'd be building towards March. Anthony Joshua was taking that fight. It was done. He was taking that fight. He wanted that fight. It's crazy to think that AJ was happy that Deontay Wilder lost, because now AJ's probably, I say probably because there are a lot of things that can happen, but probably going to have to go into a fight against Filip Hrgović, which is tough. Like, that's a tough fight. Filip Hrgović is really good, and he's certainly not going to bring the kind of cachet and the kind of money that a Deontay Wilder fight
100%.
would bring. So him, Kevin, going down these conspiracy theory rabbit holes just drive me crazy. And he does them oftentimes in interview settings where nobody calls him out on it. Like, everybody just lets him go and say these things, and he just kind of gets away with it. I just think it's tough to watch because he is such a great guy. He's been such a great fighter, and you don't want to see him go out like this, but he's going out in one of the worst possible ways that he could go out.
Well, I think there's differences. Now, I wrote on Friday before the fight, and I got criticized for it. They should be fighting each other on that card. And everybody can say whatever they want about the Day of Reckoning card, and God bless them for getting so many of the guys together. But you had minus 1,600, minus 2,500. They weren't competitive fights, and it played out, mostly in the ring, right? And the only underdog that won, well, I guess there was two underdogs that won, but because Ajit won as well. But
Caballero, yeah, he won, yeah.
Yeah. But as
and Dubois Miller was kind of a coin flip type of fight. It was close odds there.
But when you look at that and you go, why weren't Wilder? This is the craziness that happens in boxing. They should have been, and I give Wilder credit for a long time. He was chasing the AJ fight, and the business of boxing, or the mode of boxing, the way it works, put that fight off. Let's always save it for the next one and build toward it, and that does. Al Heyman got lucky with the Mayweather-Pacquiao. I don't want to say got lucky, but the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight just struck gold, right? But it was 6 years. But not every fight works that way. That was a rare circumstance with those two particular individuals. And unfortunately, in boxing, if you don't make the fights that people want to see, after a while, the people get sick of it. And then you have this happen. And I also wonder, did we see some post-trauma of the Tyson Fury fights? Every fighter only has so many punches he can take. So Wilder fought once, and it was basically a sparring session against Robert Helenius. He never took a punch in that fight, landed one big shot. The fight was over. And that was a fight that, hey, look, it was on pay-per-view, and Helenius had zero chance to win, right? So should that fight be on pay-per-view? But that's another story for another day. But the point being that he took all this abuse, got knocked down how many times, got hit, especially in those last two fights, by a 270-pound guy who was going forward and hit him clean, shot after shot after shot. Maybe what we're seeing is, Tyson Fury beat a lot of the fight out of Deontay, and that, that was the best he had left. We don't know. I hope that's not the case, because I'm like you. I like Deontay. I think he's a quality individual. And he's good for boxing, right? It's good for boxing to have that big knockout puncher and that big personality. I'm also with you that I think the conspiracy theories get tired, and he's listening to to some people that I don't think have his best interest at heart. But having said that, and I think Shelley Finkel could have a much bigger. Shelley kept saying at the post-fight press conference, "I'm a man of few words." Well, when he should have words is when he's talking to Deontay about some of that crazy stuff that you described before, and and whatnot.
Because Shelley doesn't believe it. Shelley doesn't believe any of it.
He knows it's not right, but he's got to get involved. What I'm saying is, I think he is reticent to get involved and confront Deontay about some of that BS to hurt his own position. He wants to protect his own position, as opposed to going forward and saying, "Hey, Deontay, this is what's best for you, and what you're saying is incorrect and wrong, and it's going to hurt you." And so he doesn't want to do that. He wants to protect his own position and protect the paycheck and whatever. And okay, you protected it, but now what do you have?
Yeah, you've got a fighter that has really seemed to lost his way. And I'm of the opinion, Kevin, that the only way you can make Wilder Joshua viable again is, or at least viable at the level it needs to be viable at, is to have Wilder run it back with Parker. And I don't know if it ends any differently, but I think maybe you try to run that back March or April. You do it again in Saudi Arabia. And if Wilder can score a knockout, then you can kind of treat it the same way that AJ tweeted the Ruiz fight, right? Where he bounced back with a win, got back into the big fights immediately after. That to me is the only pathway to making Wilder Joshua the caliber of fight that it needs to be. And like I said, I don't know that he wins that fight. Kevin, that right hand was so telegraphed. It was so like it was like Happy Gilmore-esque, where he's stepping into it. That made it so obvious for Joe Parker to dip his head or to move a different direction and get out of the way of it. Yeah, he landed it glancingly a couple of times, and Joe even acknowledged afterwards that dude can crack, and he can. But I don't know that he wins a rematch, not against that version of Joe Parker, who's proving, Kevin, again, the value of activity. That was the 4th fight of the year for Joseph Parker. Yeah, you can say
look at the 3 fights he fought, and you could criticize him, right? Who are the 3 guys he fought? Like total
nobody's, but he's active. He's in the ring. He's working things out with Andy Lee. Like, he's in training camp all the time. Like, there's value in that. We see it time and time again. That's why Anthony Joshua, we're going to get to in a minute, that's why he was saying at the end of last year, I got to stay active. That's why he fought 3 times in 2023. Like, you have to stay active if you want to continue to fight on an elite level.
Before we move on, let me say one thing. I agree with you for the most part, but I don't think specifically it has to be Parker, because you go back and just think of Muhammad Ali. Ken Norton, gave him nightmares all those years. And, he was never going to beat Ken Norton cleanly, right? No matter when they fought, if they were 25, 35, 45, or if they fought in the street when they were 65, it was going to be the same kind of fight. But you got to get him a good win, a Deontay Wilder type win over a recognizable opponent. And if he does,
how about Andy Ruiz? How about you throw him in with Andy Ruiz?
I think Andy Ruiz would be a great one. If he beats Andy Ruiz in the manner that Deontay Wilder has won other fights, then I think you can sell Joshua Wilder. Hey, he's back. He fought Joe Parker, who, they can make the argument. Joe Parker came to fight. So this isn't me saying this. This is them saying it. Hey, Joe didn't really want to fight, and he fought, he kind of fought not to lose, and blah, 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 blah. They can sell it if he beats somebody recognizable, a big, powerful guy that, would be there. But I agree with you from the standpoint, he needs a very convincing, emphatic win over a recognizable quality heavyweight.
And Ruiz has the same problems that Deontay's had. He's been more inactive than Deontay. And look, he won his last fight against Luis Ortiz, but he looked a little chinny in that fight. When Ortiz,
and who is he to be criticizing AJ?
I know. Well, he just wants the payday.
Dude,
like, he is so hungry for that payday, for that trilogy. Kept saying trilogy. This wasn't like, you got the fight back in 2019. You scored one of the biggest upsets we've seen in a long time. You got the rematch. You had an opportunity. You ate your way out of it. Just didn't. I don't see Andy Ruiz getting that 3rd fight with Anthony Joshua. Not anytime soon. That's for sure.